Althea Dalton's hand froze on the telegraph key the instant Sheriff Jesse Thornton pushed through the office door, with blood on his knuckles and desperation in his eyes. She hadn't spoken to him in 3 years, not since the town dance when he'd called her a liar in front of half of Silver Creek, not since her family name became a punchline, and her father stopped meeting anyone's eyes at Sunday service. Jesse's voice came out rough. "I need a favor." She kept her face stone. "The door's behind you, Sheriff." He stepped closer to the counter. "Someone's coming for me, Althea. A man I arrested 2 years back. He got loose from the territorial prison, and he's headed here with a grudge and a gun." Her pulse kicked, but she kept her hands steady on the brass key. "That sounds like a sheriff problem, not a telegraph operator problem." He set both palms flat on her counter. "I need you to send a wire to the U.S. Marshal in Carson City, and I need you to trust me long enough to help me catch him before he burns this town looking for me. Trust." The word landed like a stone in still water. She let the silence stretch until he shifted his weight. "Why would I trust you, Jesse Thornton?" His jaw tightened. "Because 3 years ago I made a mistake. And because if I don't stop this man, people in Silver Creek are going to die." She studied his face. The lines around his eyes were deeper now. The easy confidence he'd worn at 24 had been replaced by something harder. He looked like a man who'd stopped sleeping well. "What's his name?" she asked. "Cade Rafferty. He's got 2 men with him. They'll ride in quiet, ask around, and when they find me, they'll make it loud." Althea's mind moved fast. Cade Rafferty. She'd heard the name. A claim jumper who'd killed a man over a water dispute near the Juniper Ranch border 2 years back. Jesse had tracked him for 3 weeks and brought him in alive. "Send your wire," she said. "But don't mistake this for forgiveness." Relief flickered in his eyes. "I won't." She turned to the key and began tapping out the message in clean, rapid code. Her fingers knew the rhythm like breathing. She was the fastest operator between Carson City and Silver Creek, and everyone knew it. It was the one thing the gossips couldn't take from her. Jesse watched her hands move. "You're still the best at that." She didn't look up. "Flattery won't work on me. I'm not flattering. I'm stating a fact." She finished the message and waited for the acknowledgement click from Carson City. It came within 30 seconds. She wrote the confirmation on a slip of paper and slid it across the counter. "Marshall's 2 days out," she said. "You're on your own until then." Jesse folded the paper into his jacket. "Then I guess I'd better make a plan." He turned toward the door, but stopped when she spoke again. "Why me, Jesse? You've got deputies. You've got half the ranchers in this valley who'd ride with you." He looked back over his shoulder. "Because you're the only person in this town who won't panic, won't gossip, and won't fold under pressure. And because I owe you the truth, even if you never forgive me for the lie." The door closed behind him, and Althea sat down hard in her chair. Her hands were shaking now that he was gone. She pressed them flat against her skirt and took a slow breath. 3 years ago, Jesse Thornton had publicly accused her father of forging a land claim on the northern parcel of Juniper Ranch. The accusation had been loud, public, and devastating. Her father had denied it. The claim had been investigated and ultimately upheld by the Territorial Land Office, but the damage was done. People still whispered. Her younger sister had lost a marriage proposal. Her mother stopped going to church socials. And Jesse had never apologized. Not once. Until today. She stood and locked the office door, flipped the sign to closed, and walked the 3 blocks to her small house at the edge of town. The evening air was cooling fast. Storm clouds were building over the western hills, the kind that came in hard and left the streets running with mud. Her mother was at the stove when Althea came in. "Supper's nearly ready." "You're late." Althea hung her shawl on the peg. Jessie Thornton came by the office. Her mother's back stiffened. What did he want? Help. Her mother turned, wooden spoon in hand. "I hope you sent him away." Althea met her mother's eyes. "I sent his wire." "That's all. It's more than he deserves." "Maybe." Althea sat at the small table. "But if Cade Rafferty comes to Silver Creek looking for blood, it won't just be Jessie who pays." Her mother's face softened, just slightly. "You always were too practical for your own good." They ate in silence. Althea's mind kept circling back to Jessie's face, the blood on his knuckles, the exhaustion in his voice. She wondered who he'd fought before coming to her. She wondered if he'd slept at all in the past week. The knock came just after full dark. Althea opened the door to find Jessie on her porch, hat in hand, rain starting to fall behind him. "They're here," he said. "Rafferty and his men checked into the boarding house an hour ago. They're asking questions." Her mother appeared in the doorway behind her. "You need to leave, Sheriff." Jessie's gaze didn't waver from Althea. "I need to ask Althea something." In private. Althea stepped out onto the porch and closed the door. The rain was cold on her face. "What is it?" "I need you to pretend to be courting me." She stared at him. "You've lost your mind." He spoke fast. "Rafferty knows I'm alone. No wife, no family. That makes me predictable. If he thinks I've got someone I care about, someone I'd protect, it changes his approach. Makes him come at me different. Gives me an angle to catch him off guard." Althea's voice came out flat. "So you want to use me as bait?" "No." Jessie stepped closer. "I want to make him think twice. I want him to wonder if hurting you would bring the whole town down on his head. I want him to miscalculate. And if he decides hurting me is exactly the way to get to you, then I'll make sure he never gets the chance." She studied his face in the dim light spilling from her window. "Why should I believe you'll protect me when you couldn't even protect my family's name?" His expression shifted, something raw and unguarded moving across his features. "Because I was wrong, Althea. Your father didn't forge that claim. I did." The rain fell harder. Her breath caught. "What?" "I forged the original claim on that northern parcel. 10 years ago, before your father even filed. I was 19 and stupid and desperate to prove I could make something of myself. I falsified the survey marks. When your father filed a legitimate claim on the same land 5 years later, I panicked. I accused him to cover my own crime." Althea felt the ground tilt under her. "You destroyed my family to hide your own guilt." "Yes." Her hand came up fast, and she slapped him hard across the face. The sound cracked through the rain. He took it, without flinching. Her voice shook. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because if I die, when Rafferty comes for me, someone needs to know the truth. And because I'm tired of being the man who hides behind lies while calling himself a lawman." She turned away, hands pressed to her mouth. Her father had spent 3 years under a cloud of suspicion. Her sister had lost her chance at happiness. Her mother had aged a decade in public shame. "How could you?" she whispered. I don't have an answer that will make it right. But I can give you the forged documents. They're in my office. If I don't survive the next 2 days, they're yours. You can clear your father's name and destroy mine. She spun back to face him. And if you do survive, then I'll turn them over to the territorial judge myself and accept whatever consequences come. The rain soaked through her shawl. She was shaking now, from cold and shock and fury. Why would you risk telling me this before Rafferty's handled? I could turn you in right now. You could. Jesse's voice was steady. But you won't. Because you know that if I'm arrested before Rafferty's caught, this town loses its only chance at stopping 3 killers. And because I think you want to see me face justice the right way, not die in the street with my sin unconfessed. She hated that he was right. Hated that even now, even drowning in betrayal, her mind was working through the tactical reality. If Jesse was taken into custody, Silver Creek would be defenseless. Rafferty would burn through the town like wildfire. I'll do it, she said. I'll pretend to court you. But the second Rafferty's in custody, you hand over those documents. And then, you and I are done forever. Agreed. She stepped back toward her door. When do we start? Tomorrow. Town dance at the community hall. Everyone will be there. Rafferty will be watching. He left without another word. Althea went inside, stripped off her wet shawl, and sat by the fire until her mother went to bed. Then she cried. Not softly, not carefully. She cried the way a woman cries when the last piece of trust she'd been holding onto shatters in her hands. By morning, she'd locked the grief away. She dressed in her best blouse, the one with lace at the collar, and braided her hair with the blue ribbon her sister had given her 2 birthdays ago. If she was going to walk into a public dance on Jesse Thornton's arm, she'd do it with her head high. The community hall was already crowded when she arrived. Fiddle music spilled out into the street. She stood outside for a long moment, gathering her nerve, before Jesse appeared at her elbow. You look nice, he said quietly. Don't. She didn't look at him. Just play your part and keep your distance otherwise. He offered his arm. She took it. They walked in together. The room fell quiet for 3 seconds. Then the whispers started, rolling through the crowd like wind through wheat. Althea felt every eye on her. She forced herself to smile. Jesse led her to the edge of the dance floor. Dance with me, he said. I don't want to. People are watching. If we're courting, we dance. She let him take her hand and pull her into the simple pattern of a reel. His hand was steady at her waist. She kept her expression neutral and her body stiff. You're going to have to relax, he murmured. You look like you're being held hostage. I am being held hostage. By circumstance and your guilt. Fair enough. He spun her gently. But try to look like you don't hate me for 2 minutes. She met his eyes. I'll think about it. Across the room, she saw them. 3 men standing near the back wall. Rough clothes. Hard eyes. The one in the center was watching Jesse with the focus of a hawk on a rabbit. That's him, she said under her breath. Rafferty. Jesse didn't turn his head. I know. He's been staring since we walked in. What's he waiting for? To see what I care about. Jesse's hand tightened slightly at her waist. So let's give him a show. He pulled her closer, closer than the dance required. She stiffened, but didn't pull away. His voice was low near her ear. I'm sorry, Althea. For all of it. I know that doesn't fix anything. But I need you to know I mean it. She didn't answer. She couldn't. Because standing this close to him, feeling the solid warmth of him and the steadiness of his hand, she remembered why she'd once thought he was a good man. Before the betrayal, before the lie, the song ended. Jessie stepped back and bowed slightly. She curtsied, hating how natural the motion felt. "Walk outside with me," he said. "Like we're stepping out for air." She nodded. They moved through the crowd toward the side door. She felt Rafferty's eyes on her back the whole way. Outside, the air was cool and clean after the rain. Jessie led her around the corner of the building, into the shadows. "He'll follow," Jessie said. "Give it a minute." Althea's heart hammered. What if he doesn't just watch? What if he makes a move tonight? Then I'll be ready. Jessie's hand rested on the gun at his hip. But I don't think he will. He's careful. He'll want to know the layout, the routines, the weaknesses. Tonight's just reconnaissance. Footsteps sounded on the gravel. Both of them tensed. A figure appeared at the corner. Not Rafferty. One of his men. Younger, mean-looking, with a knife scar down his left cheek. "Evening," the man said. His voice carried a mockery that made Althea's skin crawl. Didn't mean to interrupt. Jessie's voice was level. "You're not interrupting. We were just leaving." The man grinned. "Funny. From where I'm standing, looks like you were doing something else." Jessie stepped slightly in front of Althea. "Move along." The man's grin widened. "Or what, Sheriff? You gonna arrest me for taking a walk? If you don't move, I'll give you a reason to be arrested." The man laughed and turned away, but the threat hung in the air like smoke. Jessie waited until the footsteps faded before speaking. That was a test. He wanted to see how I'd react. "And what did he learn?" Althea asked. "That I'll protect you. That I'll put myself between you and danger." Jessie looked down at her. "Which means Rafferty now thinks you're a vulnerability." Her throat tightened. "So your plan worked. Congratulations." "Don't." His voice roughened. "I'm not celebrating. I just put a target on your back. Then we'd better make sure Rafferty doesn't get a shot at it." They walked back inside together. The dance went on. Althea smiled and nodded at neighbors and pretended her world hadn't just narrowed to survival and secrets. When the evening finally ended, Jessie walked her home through streets still damp from the rain. At her door, he stopped. "I'll have a deputy watching your house tonight. You won't see him, but he'll be there." She turned to face him. "Jessie, if this goes wrong, if Rafferty comes after me instead of you, I need you to promise me something. Anything. Don't let my family suffer for your mistakes again. Whatever happens, you make sure my father's name gets cleared. Even if I'm not here to see it." His face went rigid. "Nothing is going to happen to you. You can't promise that." He reached out and took her hand. His grip was warm and firm. "I promise you this. I will keep you alive. And I will make sure the truth comes out. Both those things. No matter what it costs me." She wanted to pull her hand away. She wanted to hold on tighter. She did neither. She just stood there, caught between fury and something dangerously close to hope. "Good night, Jessie." "Good night, Althea." The next day, The telegraph brought word that the U.S. Marshal had been delayed by a washed-out bridge. 3 days instead of 2. Althea sent the acknowledgement and felt her stomach knot. 3 more days of playing this dangerous game. 3 more days of Jessie's secret burning a hole in her chest. She closed the office at noon and walked to the general store. She needed flour, coffee, thread, normal things. But when she stepped inside, the store went quiet. Mrs. Hargrove at the counter gave her a look that could have stripped paint. "Well," the woman said, loudly, "I suppose some people have no shame." Althea kept her voice steady. "I need 2 pounds of flour and a spool of black thread." Mrs. Hargrove didn't move. "Courting the man who slandered your own father. I never thought I'd see the day." Althea set her coins on the counter with a sharp click. "My personal life is my own business. Now, are you going to sell me flour, or do I need to take my money elsewhere?" The woman's mouth pinched, but she turned to fill the order. Althea waited in silence, feeling the weight of judgment from every corner of the store. She took her parcels and walked out with her head high. Outside, she nearly collided with Jesse. He caught her elbow to steady her. "You all right?" She pulled free. "I'm fine. Just adding another layer to my family's humiliation." "I heard what Mrs. Hargrove said." His jaw was tight. "I'll talk to her." "Don't." Althea shifted the parcels in her arms. "It'll only make it worse. Let people talk. Once Rafferty's dealt with, none of this will matter anyway." Jessie fell into step beside her. "It matters to me." She stopped walking and turned to face him. "Why? Why does any of this matter to you now? You spent 3 years letting people believe my father was a criminal. You built your reputation on that lie. So why do you suddenly care what people say about me?" He met her eyes, and she saw something raw there, something unguarded. "Because watching them hurt you feels worse than anything Rafferty could do to me." Before she could answer, a shout went up from the far end of the street. Both of them turned. Smoke, black and thick, rising from the direction of Juniper Ranch. Jessie swore and started running. Althea dropped her parcels and followed. Others were running too, forming a ragged line toward the smoke. By the time they reached the ranch boundary, the hay barn was fully engulfed. Flames licked at the sky. The heat hit them like a wall. The ranch foreman was rallying men with buckets from the well. Jessie grabbed a bucket and joined the line. Althea saw her father near the barn, trying to lead panicked horses away from the flames. She ran to help, catching the halter of a terrified mare and pulling her toward safety. "Was anyone inside?" Jessie shouted over the roar. "No," the foreman shouted back. "But we lost 3 months of feed and most of the tack." "How did it start?" The foreman's face was grim, deliberate. "I found a torch in the grass." Althea's blood went cold. She scanned the crowd and saw him. Rafferty. Standing at the back, watching the chaos with satisfaction written on his face. Jessie saw him too. His hands tightened on the bucket. But he didn't move. Couldn't move. Not yet. Not without proof. The fire burned for 2 hours before they got it under control. When the last embers were drowned, half the town stood in soot-stained exhaustion around the blackened skeleton of the barn. Jessie found Althea near the water trough. "You saw him?" She nodded. He wanted you to see him. He's sending a message. The message is received. Jesse's voice was hard. He's escalating. Which means I'm running out of time. That night, Althea didn't go home. She went to Jesse's office instead. He was at his desk, studying a map of Silver Creek by lamplight. He looked up when she entered. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "People will talk. Let them." She closed the door behind her. "I want to see the documents." The forged claim. He hesitated, then unlocked a drawer and pulled out a leather folder. He set it on the desk between them. "These are copies. The originals are in the Territorial Land Office." She opened the folder. The papers inside looked official. Survey marks, boundary descriptions, date stamps, and at the bottom, a signature she recognized, because she'd seen it on every arrest warrant for the past 5 years. Jesse Thornton's signature, but dated 10 years ago, when he would have been barely 19. "How did you even know how to do this?" she asked. "My father was a surveyor before he drank himself to death. I watched him work. I learned. And when he died and left me with nothing but debts, I thought I could claim a piece of land and sell it for enough to start over. But you couldn't sell it." "No. Because by the time I worked up the nerve to approach a buyer, your father had filed a legitimate claim on the same parcel. And I realized if anyone looked closely at the dates, they'd see mine was fraudulent. So I panicked. I accused him first, hoping to bury my own crime in the confusion." She closed the folder. The weight of it sat heavy in her hands. "You were 19 and desperate. I understand that. But you were 24 when you destroyed my father's reputation in front of the whole town." That wasn't panic. That was a choice. Jesse's voice was raw. It was a choice. And it was wrong. "I have spent 3 years trying to be the kind of lawman who deserves the badge. But every time I look at it, I see your father's face that night. I see your mother turn away from me at church. I see you refuse to meet my eyes on the street. I can't undo it. But I can stop hiding from it." Althea set the folder down. "If you turn this over, you'll lose everything. The badge. The respect. Maybe your freedom. I know. Why now? Why not a year ago? 2 years ago?" He stood and came around the desk. "Because a year ago, I was still a coward. And because 2 days ago I looked at you and realized I'd rather lose everything than keep lying to the one person whose opinion I actually care about." She stepped back. "Don't do that. Don't make this about me. This is about justice. It's about both." He held her gaze. "I care about justice, but I care about you more. And that terrifies me because I have no right to feel that way." The words hung between them like a bridge made of smoke. Fragile, dangerous, impossible to cross without burning. A gunshot shattered the window. Glass exploded inward. Jesse grabbed Althea and pulled her down behind the desk. Another shot splintered the door frame. "Stay down," Jesse ordered. He drew his gun and moved toward the broken window in a crouch. Rafferty's voice carried through the night. "Come out, Thornton, or I start shooting up the whole street." Jesse looked back at Althea. His face was set. "I have to end this now. Not alone." She grabbed his arm. "Wait for help. There's no time. If I wait, people die. He pulled free gently. Stay here. Lock the door behind me. If I don't come back, the documents are yours. Jesse, don't do this. But he was already at the door. He stepped out into the street. Althea ran to the broken window and watched in horror. Rafferty stood in the middle of the street with his 2 men flanking him. All 3 had guns drawn. The street had emptied. Shutters slammed shut on every building. You took 2 years of my life, Rafferty called. Now I'm taking yours. Jesse walked forward slowly. You killed a man over water rights. You earned every day of that sentence. And you earned this. Rafferty raised his gun. Time seemed to slow. Althea saw Jesse's hand move toward his own weapon. She saw Rafferty's finger tighten on the trigger. And she moved without thinking. She burst out of the office and ran into the street, putting herself between them. No! Jesse's shout tore through the night. Althea, get back! But she didn't move. She stood there, breathing hard, staring at Rafferty. You want him. You go through me. And every person in this town will see you shoot an unarmed woman. Is that the legacy you want? Rafferty's gun didn't waver. You think I care about legacy? I think you care about surviving long enough to spend your freedom. You shoot me. These people will hunt you to the ends of the earth. They might tolerate you killing a sheriff. They won't tolerate you killing me. The street was silent, except for the wind. Rafferty's eyes narrowed. Then, Jesse can come with me. Nice and peaceful. I'll let him go once I'm clear of town. You'll kill him the second you're out of sight, Althea shot back. I'm not stupid. Then we're at an impasse. Rafferty's voice was cold. Someone's dying tonight. That's when the townspeople emerged. First one, then another, then a dozen. They came out of doorways and alleys with rifles and shotguns, forming a loose ring around Rafferty and his men. Althea's father was among them. So was the ranch foreman. So was Mrs. Hargrove, holding her late husband's rifle with surprising steadiness. You can try, her father called out. But you won't make it 10 feet. Rafferty's confidence cracked. His men shifted nervously. The odds had changed. Jesse stepped up beside Althea. His voice was low and hard. You're done, Rafferty. Drop the gun or die right here. Your choice. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then, Rafferty lowered his weapon. His men followed suit. Jesse moved forward fast, disarming them and snapping iron cuffs on wrists. The tension broke like a fever. The townspeople lowered their weapons. Someone started clapping. Others joined. But Althea barely heard it. She was shaking so hard she could barely stand. Jesse's hand was on her elbow, steadying her. That was the bravest and most reckless thing I've ever seen. I wasn't letting him kill you. Her voice shook. Not before you set things right. He led her back to his office, while deputies secured the prisoners. Inside, he poured her a tin cup of water from the pitcher. Her hands shook as she drank. Why did you do that? He asked. You could have been killed. She set the cup down. Because despite everything, despite the lies and the pain and the betrayal, I don't want you dead. And I don't want to live in a world where you didn't get the chance to make it right. He reached out and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was so tender it made her throat ache. I don't deserve you in my corner. No. You don't. But here I am anyway. The U.S. Marshal arrived the next day. He took custody of Rafferty and his men, signed the transfer papers, and shook Jesse's hand. "Good work, Sheriff. The territory owes you." When the marshal was gone, Jesse walked straight to the territorial judge's office and handed over the forged land claim documents, along with a full written confession. The judge read it twice, face darkening with each pass. "You understand what this means, Thornton?" "Yes, sir. I'm ready to face the consequences." The judge leaned back in his chair. "I'll have to send this to the territorial capital. There'll be a hearing. You'll likely lose your badge. There may be criminal charges." "I understand." The judge studied him for a long moment. "Why now?" "Because I'm tired of being a hypocrite. And because the people I hurt deserve the truth." The hearing was set for 2 weeks out. In those 2 weeks, Silver Creek buzzed with shock and gossip. Some called Jesse a fool. Others called him honorable. Althea's father was publicly cleared by the judge's preliminary statement. The shadow that had hung over the Dalton family lifted like fog in sunlight. Althea found Jesse sitting on the steps of the church 3 days before the hearing. He looked like he hadn't slept. She sat down beside him without asking. "You didn't have to do this," she said quietly. "You could have buried those documents, and no one would have known. I would have known. And you would have known. That's 2 people too many." She looked out at the town. "My father came to see me yesterday. He said he forgives you." Jesse's voice was rough. "I don't know if I can forgive myself. Maybe that's not your job. Maybe your job is just to tell the truth, and let the rest of us decide what to do with it." He turned to look at her. "What do you want to do with it?" She met his eyes. "I don't know yet. I'm still angry. I'm still hurt. But I'm also starting to understand that people are more than the worst thing they've ever done. Even me, even you." The hearing was held in the community hall. It seemed like the entire town packed in to watch. The territorial judge presided. Jesse stood and answered every question with unflinching honesty. He admitted the forgery. He admitted the false accusation. He admitted cowardice and pride. And 3 years of compounding lies. When he finished, the judge asked if anyone wished to speak on his behalf. Althea stood. She walked to the front. Her voice carried clear across the room. 3 years ago, this man hurt my family. He lied. He let us suffer. I hated him for it. But 2 weeks ago, he told me the truth, knowing it would cost him everything. He didn't have to. He could have stayed silent. But he chose justice over self-preservation. That doesn't erase what he did, but it shows who he's trying to become. And I believe people deserve a chance to become better than they were. Her father stood next. I agree. Jesse Thornton wronged me. But he also risked his life to protect this town from men who would have burned it to the ground. I don't excuse his crime, but I recognize his courage. And I'm willing to see what kind of man he becomes from here. One by one, others stood. The ranch foreman, Mrs. Hargrove, even the mayor. The testimony was mixed, but the theme was clear. Jesse had earned a measure of grace through honesty and sacrifice. The judge deliberated for an hour. When he returned, his face was grave. Jesse Thornton, you have committed fraud and falsely accused an innocent man. These are serious crimes. However, this court recognizes your full confession, your years of service, and the testimony of those you wronged. Therefore, I am imposing the following sentence. You will forfeit your position as sheriff. You will pay restitution to the Dalton family in the amount of $500. You will serve 6 months of supervised labor on community projects, and your name will be stricken from eligibility for any elected or appointed law enforcement position in this territory for 10 years. The gavel came down. Jessie accepted the sentence without flinching. Althea felt something loosen in her chest. Justice. Imperfect, but real. After the hearing, Jessie found her outside. The afternoon sun was warm. He'd removed his badge and held it in his hand like a relic. "Thank you," he said, "for speaking. I spoke the truth. That's all. It was more than I deserved." She looked at him for a long moment. "What will you do now?" "Honest work. Pay my debt. Try to rebuild something worth keeping." She nodded slowly. "Then maybe, when your sentence is finished, you'll be someone I can trust again." His eyes searched her face. "Is that a possibility? Real trust? I don't know. But I'd like to find out." He smiled. It was a tired, fragile, hopeful thing. "That's more than I thought I'd get." She stepped closer. "Jessie Thornton, you're a flawed, stubborn, reckless man. But you're also brave and honest when it costs you. And I think maybe I could care about that man. If he keeps trying, I'll keep trying. I promise you that." She reached out and took his hand. "Good. Because I'm not letting you off easy. If we're going to do this, you're going to have to earn every step." He squeezed her hand gently. "I wouldn't want it any other way." They stood there on the steps of the community hall, holding hands in full view of Silver Creek. And for the first time in 3 years, Althea felt something like peace settle over her. The road ahead would be long. Forgiveness was a slow thing, built day by day through choice and action. But standing there with Jessie's hand warm in hers, she believed it was possible. 6 months later, Jessie finished his sentence. He'd worked on the new schoolhouse, repaired fences, cleared irrigation ditches, and helped rebuild the barn at Juniper Ranch. His hands were calloused. His back was strong. And when he walked through Silver Creek, people nodded at him with cautious respect. Althea watched him from the telegraph office window as he crossed the street toward her. He'd lost the badge, but gained something better. Integrity. The kind that didn't need a title. He pushed through the door. "Afternoon, Miss Dalton." She smiled. "Afternoon, Mr. Thornton. What can I do for you?" "I came to make good on a promise." He pulled an envelope from his coat and set it on the counter. "Final restitution payment. $500, as ordered." She opened the envelope and counted the bills. All there. Her father would be pleased. And one more thing. He reached into his other pocket and pulled out a small carved wooden box. He set it beside the envelope. "What's this?" "Open it." She lifted the lid. Inside was a ring. Simple silver, no stone. Just a smooth band with a tiny engraved pattern of wild roses. She looked up at him, heart suddenly racing. Jessie's voice was steady. "I'm not asking you to say yes today. I'm not even asking you to say yes this year. But I'm asking if you'll consider, someday, letting me spend the rest of my life proving I'm the man you believed I could be. I love you, Althea. I think I've loved you since the day you slapped me in the rain. And I want to build a life with you. If you'll have me." Tears pricked her eyes. She closed the box gently and held it against her chest. "Ask me again in a year if you're still the man you are today, if you keep choosing honesty and hard work. And me, then I'll say yes." He grinned, and the expression transformed his face. "A year. I can work with that." "Good. Because I have high standards, Mr. Thornton." "I know. That's why I'm asking." She came around the counter and stood in front of him. "And just so you know, I'm already leaning toward yes." He cupped her face in his hands. The gesture was careful, reverent. "Then I'll make sure you never regret it." She rose up on her toes and kissed him. It was soft and slow and full of promise. When they broke apart, she rested her forehead against his. "I love you too," she whispered. "Even when I didn't want to. Even when it hurt. I loved you." His arms came around her, strong and sure. "I'll spend the rest of my life being worthy of that." They stood there, in the quiet telegraph office, holding each other while the afternoon sun streamed through the window, and the town of Silver Creek went about its business outside. The past was still there, a scar that would never fully fade. But the future stretched ahead, open and unwritten, and for the first time in years, both of them believed it could be good. A year later, they married in the small church on the hill. Althea wore a simple white dress with lace at the collar and wild roses in her braided hair. Jessie wore a clean dark suit and held her hand like it was the most precious thing in the world. Her father walked her down the aisle with his head high, and his name cleared. Her mother cried happy tears. Her sister stood beside her, beaming. When the preacher asked if she took this man, Althea looked into Jessie's eyes and saw the man he'd fought to become. Flawed. Honest. Hers. "I do," she said. And when Jessie said the same, his voice steady and sure, she believed him. They walked out of the church into the bright summer sunshine, hand in hand, husband and wife. The town cheered. Someone threw rice. Jessie pulled her close and kissed her in front of everyone, and Althea laughed against his mouth, tasting joy and promise and the sweetness of a love that had survived betrayal and grown stronger for it. They built a house on the northern parcel of land, the same piece that had once been the center of so much pain. Jessie cleared the ground. Althea planted a garden. Together they turned a place of lies into a home of truth. On quiet evenings, they sat on the porch and watched the sun set over Silver Creek. Jessie would take her hand and she would lean against his shoulder, and neither of them needed to say what they both knew. Some things were worth fighting for. Some people were worth forgiving. And some loves were strong enough to outlast even the deepest wounds. They had found all three,